The revolutionary power of unconditional acceptance, how meeting people where they are can transform lives and communities. Welcome, everyone, to another enlightening episode of the BlackCEO Podcast. Today, we're diving deep into a topic that has the power to revolutionize how we approach community support, personal growth, and societal change. I'm thrilled to share with you the profound insights I gained from my recent interview with Antoinette Jones, a true visionary whose work is not just changing lives, but reshaping entire communities. Antoinette Jones isn't just another community activist or social worker. She's a force of nature, a beacon of hope in a world that often seems devoid of it. Her approach to community service and support is nothing short of revolutionary. And I promise you, by the end of this talk, you'll be looking at the concept of helping others in a whole new light. Now, before we dive in, let me paint a picture for you. Imagine a world where every person who needed help was met with open arms, understanding, and unconditional support. A world where your past doesn't define you, where your current struggles don't limit you, and where your potential is seen and nurtured regardless of your circumstances. Sounds like a fantasy, right? Well, Antoinette Jones is making this a reality, one person, one community at a time. Antoinette's journey began in the heart of a community that many had written off as a lost cause, a neighborhood plagued by poverty, addiction, and a profound lack of opportunity. But where others saw hopelessness, Antoinette saw potential. Where others saw problems, she saw people, real, complex, valuable human beings, deserving of dignity and support. Her mantra, "We meet you right where you are with no judgment," isn't just a catchy slogan. It's a radical philosophy that's turning traditional notions of community support on their head. And let me tell you, the results are nothing short of miraculous. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Sure, that sounds nice, but what does it really mean in practice? Isn't this just feel-good fluff? Oh, my friends, buckle up, because we're about to dive into the nitty-gritty of how this approach is transforming lives and communities in ways that traditional methods have failed to do for decades. Let's start with a story that Antoinette shared with me, one that perfectly illustrates the power of this approach. Meet James, not his real name, of course. James had been in and out of rehab facilities for years. Each time, he'd start with hope, only to be crushed by the rigid requirements and judgmental attitudes he encountered. He was on the verge of giving up entirely when he stumbled into one of Antoinette's programs. Now, here's where things get interesting. Instead of handing James a list of rules and expectations, they asked him a simple question. What do you need to feel supported? Can you imagine the look on James's face? Here he was, a man who'd been told for years what he needed to do, suddenly being asked what he needed. The result, James opened up. He talked about his struggles, his fears, his dreams, and for the first time in years, he felt heard. The program worked with James at his own pace. They celebrated his small victories, a day sober, a job interview, reconnecting with his estranged daughter. They stood by him during his setbacks, offering support instead of judgment. And you know what? James not only achieved sobriety, but found a sense of purpose he'd never had before. Today, he's employed, reconnected with his family, and mentoring others who are where he once was. This, my friends, is the power of meeting people where they are, without judgment. But Antoinette's approach goes far beyond individual success stories. It's about creating a ripple effect that transforms entire communities. By removing the barriers of judgment and rigid expectations, she's fostering an environment where people feel safe to seek help, to be vulnerable, and to grow. Now, I can almost hear some of you skeptics out there. Isn't this just enabling bad behavior? It's a fair question, and one that Antoinette has faced countless times. But here's the kicker. Her approach isn't about condoning harmful actions. It's about creating a safe space for change to occur organically. Think about it for a moment. When was the last time shame or judgment motivated you to make a lasting positive change in your life? I'll wait, still waiting. Exactly. Chances are, it didn't. In fact, it probably made you feel worse and less likely to seek help. Antoinette's approach flips this on its head. By offering unconditional support and meeting people where they are, she's creating an environment where people feel empowered to make positive changes in their lives. Let me share another story that illustrates this beautifully. Antoinette told me about a community center she established in a neighborhood that had been written off by many as a lost cause. Now, here's where her approach really shines.
Instead of swooping in with a predetermined set of programs and expectations, she and her team spent months just listening to the community. They asked what people needed, what their dreams were, what barriers they faced. The result? A center that truly reflected the needs and aspirations of the community. It wasn't just a place to get services. It became a hub of empowerment, a place where people could come as they were and leave better equipped to face their challenges. One of the most powerful aspects of this approach is how it changes the dynamic between helper and helped. In traditional models, there's often an implicit power imbalance. The helper has the resources and knowledge, and the helped is expected to be grateful and compliant. But in Antoinette's model, it's a partnership. The people seeking help are recognized as experts in their own lives, with valuable insights and strengths to contribute. This shift in perspective is revolutionary. It transforms the act of seeking help from something shameful or demeaning into an empowering step towards growth and self-improvement. It recognizes the inherent dignity in every person, regardless of their current circumstances. Now let's talk about impact, because I know some of you are wondering, sure, this sounds great, but does it really work on a larger scale? Antoinette's approach isn't just changing individual lives, it's challenging our entire conception of what effective community support looks like. Traditional models often focus on quantifiable metrics, how many people served, how many programs offered, but Antoinette is showing us that true impact often can't be captured in neat statistics. Instead, she measures success in the intangibles, the increased sense of hope in a community, the strengthened bonds between neighbors, the gradual but profound shifts in how people see themselves and their potential. It's a holistic approach that recognizes that sustainable change doesn't happen overnight, but through consistent, compassionate support over time. Let me give you a concrete example. Antoinette shared with me how she's been working with city governments and larger organizations to incorporate this meet you where you are philosophy into their existing structures. One city that adopted this approach in its homeless outreach programs saw not only an increase in the number of people accessing services, but also a significant improvement in long-term outcomes. By removing judgment and meeting people where they were, literally in many cases, on the streets where they lived, they were able to build trust and create pathways to sustainable change that traditional approaches had failed to achieve. But here's where it gets really interesting. Antoinette's approach isn't just changing lives. It's challenging our very conception of what it means to help others. It's forcing us to confront our own biases and preconceptions. And let me tell you, that's not always comfortable. I'll be honest with you. When Antoinette first explained her approach to me, I was skeptical. I thought, surely people need some structure, some rules to follow. But as she shared story after story of lives transformed, of communities revitalized, I found my perspective shifting. And that's the real power of Antoinette's work. It's not just about the people she's directly helping. It's about challenging all of us to rethink how we approach support, community, and human dignity. Imagine for a moment how different our world could be if we all adopted this philosophy in our daily lives. How might our interactions with our family members, our colleagues, or even strangers on the street change if we truly committed to meeting people where they are, without judgment? It's not always easy. It requires us to confront our own biases and preconceptions. It asks us to be vulnerable, to admit that we don't have all the answers. But the potential for transformation, both for ourselves and for our communities, is enormous. As I reflected on my conversation with Antoinette, I found myself both inspired and challenged. Inspired by the incredible impact of her work and challenged to incorporate this philosophy more fully into my own life and work. And that's the challenge I want to leave you with today. How can you embody this meet you where you are philosophy in your own life? It might be in your personal relationships, in your professional life, or in how you engage with your community. Start small. Maybe it's just committing to truly listening to someone without trying to fix or judge their situation. Or perhaps it's volunteering with an organization that embodies these principles. Whatever form it takes, I encourage you to embrace this powerful philosophy, because when we meet people where they are, without judgment, we create space for real connection, growth, and transformation. We open up possibilities, not just for others, but for ourselves as well. Antoinette Jones's work reminds us that change, real, lasting, meaningful change, starts with compassion. It starts with seeing the humanity in every person, regardless of their circumstances. It starts with meeting people where they are. As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a challenge that might just change your life and the lives of those around you. I want you to commit to 1 week of practicing this meet people where they are philosophy. For 1 week, approach every interaction, whether it's with your spouse, your kids, your coworkers, or the cashier at your local grocery store. So, with an open mind and heart, resist the urge to judge. Instead, listen, really listen. Try to understand where they're coming from, what they're struggling with, what they're dreaming of, and then offer your support. Not based on where you think they should be, but exactly where they are right now. It won't be easy. You'll find yourself wanting to offer advice, to fix things. You'll catch yourself making judgments, and that's okay. The goal isn't perfection, it's progress. It's about starting to shift our mindset from one of judgment to one of understanding and unconditional support. At the end of the week, reflect on your experiences. How did it change your interactions? How did it make you feel? How did others respond? I bet you'll be surprised by the profound impact this simple shift can have. And here's the kicker. Don't stop after a week. Make this a lifelong practice, because if we all committed to meeting people where they are without judgment, imagine the world we could create, a world of understanding, of compassion, of real meaningful connection. This is the world Antoinette Jones is working towards. And it's a world we can all help build, one interaction at a time. So, are you ready to join the revolution? Are you ready to meet people where they are, to offer unconditional support, to be a catalyst for transformative change in your community? Remember, every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Your willingness to meet them where they are without judgment could be the lifeline they've been desperately seeking. You have the power to change lives, to transform communities, to make our world a little bit brighter, a little bit kinder, a little bit more understanding. So let's do this. Let's commit to meeting people where they are. Let's be the change we want to see in the world. Because in the end, it's not about fixing people or solving all their problems. It's about creating a space where people feel seen, heard, and valued. And in that space, miracles can happen. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. Now go out there and start meeting people where they are. The world is waiting for the change you can bring. Let's make it happen together.